Welcome to NTD News. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Here are today's top stories. Reports of 100,000 being infected with the coronavirus in China. Local officials struggle to contain the virus. And the coronavirus spreading to several new locations around the globe. Officials say the virus is more contagious than they previously thought. President Trump denies telling John Bolton to withhold Ukraine aid. He says Bolton could make the claim just to sell his new book. And too close to call, Democratic senators use a break in the impeachment hearing to continue their bid for the presidency. Polls show at least 4 candidates have a chance to win. Media reports are saying 100,000 people in China could be infected with the coronavirus. The regime extended the Lunar New Year holiday, and more big businesses shut down or told staff to work from home.
The Lunar New Year is usually a time for millions of people to travel, but many had to cancel their plans because of travel curbs over the virus. Residents in Beijing say they are afraid.
We are very scared. We've stayed at home for days and never dared to go out. Today, if it was not for my wife who had come to the hospital for a prenatal exam, we would not come out, so we are wearing masks.
The true numbers of deaths and infections from the virus are likely to be higher than what the communist regime says, as the regime has a history of covering up and faking numbers. Many Western media are reporting that 100,000 people could be infected in China. 18 cities in Hubei province have been entirely locked down. Severe limits on movement are in place in 4 Chinese provinces and 3 major Chinese cities, including Beijing, Shanghai, and Tianjin. The city of Wuhan clamped down further on Monday, announcing the suspension of visa and passport services until January 30th. Mongolia has closed all universities and educational institutes to contain the spread of the deadly coronavirus until early March. It has also closed border crossings for auto vehicles and pedestrian traffic from Monday and called for all public gatherings to be cancelled. People inside China can only get news from the state-controlled media. Regime censors continue scrubbing the internet, and Chinese citizens inside the lockdown are left afraid and unsure of what's really happening. China director at Human Rights Watch Sophie Richardson said the regime's response to the crisis raises real concerns about transparency. She told British newspaper The Telegraph that from a medical and human rights perspective, it's essential that people are getting truthful information.
The coronavirus spread further over the weekend. There are now 5 confirmed cases in the U.S. and 3 in France. Australia is now tracing anyone that came into contact with its 5th confirmed case.
I can now confirm that
Australia confirmed its 5th case of the novel coronavirus on Monday. The infected woman was on the last flight out of Wuhan to Sydney before China imposed the travel ban. She had no symptoms and felt well whilst on the airplane.
That particular flight was actually met by health officials, and at that time she presented with no symptoms. It was in the consequent days after that, shortly after that, that she started to feel unwell.
China's health minister told reporters Sunday that the coronavirus is contagious during its incubation period, meaning it could be passed on before a person displays any symptoms. This period between infection and symptoms appearing can last up to 14 days. Health officials in Australia are now tracing potential carriers of the virus, those that came into contact with the woman prior to her being put into quarantine. Australia's first 4 cases were confirmed on Sunday, within Melbourne and 3 in Sydney. Several other countries were affected by the pneumonia-like virus over the weekend. Confirmed cases in the U.S. rose to 5. Taiwan confirmed its 4th case, and the number in Hong Kong has risen to 8. Thailand also has 8 confirmed cases, the highest number so far in any country outside of China. The coronavirus is believed to have originated in a wildlife market in the central Chinese city of Wuhan. Australian Foreign Minister Marise Payne said the government is looking closely at what they can do to help people still in the province. France has the first 3 confirmed cases in Europe. The French government is planning to repatriate dozens or possibly hundreds of its citizens from Wuhan this week. Local media suggest the UK is considering doing the same. Austria had its first suspected case of the virus over the weekend, and at least 6 suspected cases emerged in India on Monday.
And health officials in Canada announced the first 2 cases of the coronavirus. Officials say they are preparing for more cases that may come. NTD's Toronto correspondent Eric Rusick has the story.
Over the weekend, Canadian government officials announced the first case of the coronavirus in Canada.
You know that the province of Ontario informed the Public Health Agency of Canada that they had a case of the novel coronavirus. The patient, who had recently returned from Wuhan, China, is isolated and under care. And pending confirmation by Canada's National Microbiology Laboratory, which is expected to complete the testing within the next 24 hours, this represents the first case of novel coronavirus in Canada.
A man in his 50s who traveled from Wuhan last Wednesday was able to pass the airport screening. However, as the symptoms got worse, he called 911 and notified authorities and is now under care in Toronto Hospital. The wife of the man also tested positive for the virus. Since arriving in Toronto with her husband, she has been in self-isolation. Several Western countries, including the United States and Australia, are working to evacuate their citizens from the area. Canadian officials have issued an advisory to avoid non-essential travel to the province of Hubei, including the cities of Wuhan, Huanggang, and Ezhou, due to the imposition of heavy travel restrictions. Dr. Dick Zoltman is the chief of staff at the Scarborough Health Network and was at the forefront dealing with SARS in 2003. He says one of the challenging parts in this case is that people who get the virus sometimes don't show many signs of being sick.
Remember, the SARS outbreak didn't spread particularly efficiently in the community. You know, community gatherings, New Year's celebrations, events like that. It did spread very efficiently inside hospitals. But this virus seems to also be spreading, as far as we can tell, in the community as well.
Reporting by Eric Rusek, NTD News, Toronto.
Anti-government demonstrators gathered on Sunday night to protest the Hong Kong government's response to the coronavirus. The protesters are opposed to government plans to house quarantine patients or medical workers in the Fanling neighborhood. Fanling is a district far from Hong Kong's busy business centers, where the government has announced it will take over an as-yet unoccupied public housing project for the possible fallout of the coronavirus. Hong Kong has confirmed 2 more cases of the virus, raising its total to 8 as of today. In total, there were 107 patients staying in the hospital for isolation and management in Hong Kong on Sunday. And crowds of fans gathered outside the Staples Center in Los Angeles to pay tribute to Kobe Bryant. The NBA legend died yesterday in a helicopter crash in foggy conditions about 40 miles northwest of central LA.
Fans of the late Los Angeles Lakers star Kobe Bryant were drawn together on Sunday. Bryant died earlier that day when the helicopter he was traveling in crashed into a hillside near LA. His 13-year-old daughter and 7 others were also killed in the accident. Emotions were running high outside the Staples Center, the home of the Los Angeles Lakers. A 17-year-old fan felt the need to come to pay tribute to the star that inspired him to play basketball.
I started watching Kobe when I was probably 7 years old or 6, and he inspired me to pick up a basketball and play the game. So I've been watching him ever since, and I really felt the need to come here.
His mother broke the news to him. She said she knew it was going to have a significant impact.
And he just broke into tears, and so just thought that we could pay him some respect. By coming down here, being part of the community, we knew that there would be an outpour because he's just so loved.
The crowd of fans gathered together, paying homage to the NBA legend. They spoke of heartbreak at the loss of the 41-year-old star. This fan said he would not be forgotten.
Kobe will forever live in my life and will forever be LA, the king of LA.
Bryant retired from basketball in 2016. When the crash took place, he was flying to Thousand Oaks, California to coach his daughter's basketball team. The investigation into the cause of the accident is ongoing.
President Trump denies telling John Bolton he withheld aid to Ukraine in order to investigate his Democratic rivals. A report in the New York Times revealed an excerpt from Bolton's forthcoming book that could prove pivotal in President Trump's impeachment trial.
The president posted a series of tweets early on Monday saying he never told John Bolton that the aid to Ukraine was tied to investigations into Democrats, including the Bidens. He also wrote, in fact, he never complained about this at the time of his very public termination. If John Bolton said this, it was only to sell a book. In another tweet, President Trump said people could look at the transcripts of his call and at statements by Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky to see that there was no pressure for such investigations to get the aid. The president's legal team has repeatedly insisted that the president never tied the suspension of U.S. military assistance to Ukraine to investigations that he wanted into Biden and his son. Bolton's account was first reported by the New York Times. In the meantime, the Amazon product page for Bolton's book went live. The latest developments gave Democrats new fuel in their pursuit of sworn testimony from Bolton and other witnesses, a question expected to be taken up later this week by the Senate.
Senators Bernie Sanders, Amy Klobuchar, and Elizabeth Warren used time off from the impeachment hearings to continue their bid for the presidency. They joined other hopefuls in Iowa ahead of the state's all-important Democratic caucus.
Democratic presidential candidates are busy campaigning ahead of the Iowa caucus next Monday. It's a significant day. Iowa has a strong record of backing the final Democratic nominee. In fact, they've got it right the last 5 times.
The outcome of the Iowa caucus does influence the assessment of voters around the country.
Almost 2,000 delegates are needed to secure the nomination. Iowa only has 41, small compared to states like Texas or California. But it holds influence by being the first state to vote. Usually a field of candidates narrows to the top 3 or 4 after the state's caucus.
We have the upper hand in this as far as getting it kicked out. I mean, I have relatives in other states who haven't kept track of anybody.
Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, and Elizabeth Warren are polling well, but with the results of each poll differing significantly, it's still anybody's contest.
I think it's really neat, that they're coming around telling us their points of views and stuff.
Iowa has a unique but complicated method for choosing their nominee. Voters will meet at 1,600 locations around the state. Some will meet in schools, gymnasiums, or even private living rooms. They don't use paper ballots to vote. Instead, attendees will choose the preferred candidate by standing in a particular area of a room.
In this age of cynicism and disconnection from politics, there's still some place where that person-to-person interaction takes place.
If a candidate gets less than 15% of the room's votes, he or she will be deemed not viable. That candidate's supporters will then be asked to choose another viable candidate. Presumably viable candidates Sanders, Biden, Warren, and Buttigieg currently hold around 70% of the support. That means that 30% of votes in Iowa could still be up for grabs.
President Trump is set to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today. The two are expected to jointly reveal the president's new Middle East peace plan.
President Trump is set to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today. The visit coincides with the release of President Trump's Mideast peace plan. The unveiling of the plan, meant to bring peace in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, will likely hand the Israeli Prime Minister a political boost. Addressing his cabinet shortly before departing on Sunday, Netanyahu described his close ties with Trump as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Israel.
And I will meet with President Trump tomorrow and on Tuesday. Together with him, we will make history.
President Trump will also meet with Netanyahu's opposition leader Benny Gantz. Palestinian leaders have already rejected Trump's Middle East peace plan, despite not having seen it. The plan has been kept a tight secret, but the White House already reached out to other countries in the Middle East, along with European countries, for support once the plan is revealed.
Coming up, an Iranian passenger plane skids off the runway and onto a nearby street. Find out how close this plane was to causing disaster when we return.
Oh, the show is phenomenal.
This is the best ever.
The way I look at Chen Yin is this heavenly experience. I have never seen in my life so many amazing dancers, so many amazing and beautiful costumes.
Everything in the movements, in the smile, in the emotion. They could bring grace. I was taking my dish, I was really impressed.
The back extension, the leg extension, the rotation, absolute perfection. I just have chills, can you tell?
The music is really extraordinary.
It sounded like it was pre-recorded, like it was so perfect. And I looked down and I could see all the orchestra playing. It was hard to believe it was actual live music. It was so perfect.
I like how it's not just beautiful with the colors and the music, but also it's funny because there's some storytelling elements to it.
I love every moment, especially the message of the Chinese ancient culture.
There's no other company in the United States that does this.
My heart was touched tonight. And every time I see actors perform with grace and dignity like that, it's a spiritual experience in itself.
I see God. I see the spirit of love and peace and the way that you would want the universe to be.
The energy that I got from watching is that internal spirit that I think that we all have that comes from our Creator. And I could feel that in my heart and in my soul.
I would tell my friends to see Chen Yin because it is life-changing. And you'll walk away feeling positive and like you want to help the world be a better place.
Everyone should see something so pretty.
Our kids are 6 and 8 years old, and they enjoyed it and would like to come back to see it again.
I think it's for all people, and everyone needs to see it. Absolutely everyone.
U.S. officials confirmed that 3 rockets hit the U.S. Embassy in Iraq yesterday. One rocket hit the embassy cafeteria in the capital Baghdad at dinner time, while the other 2 landed nearby. At least one person was injured, but it was reported that the injury was minor. Although no group is being blamed directly, the U.S. State Department noted that since September 2019, there have been more than 14 attacks on U.S. personnel by either the Iranian government or militias. And an Iranian passenger airline skidded off a runway and onto a nearby street today with some 150 passengers on board. The plane apparently lost its landing gear during the hard touchdown.
No major injuries were reported. Footage showed the flight's passengers calmly exiting the plane from one front door and one over the wing. They were helped to the street by people on the ground. Provincial Airport Director Mohammad Reza Rezanian confirmed that all passengers left the plane safely. But it seems that tragedy was narrowly avoided. Images from the scene showed the plane had ground to a halt not far from a populated area. The incident comes as Iran is still coping with the aftermath of the accidental downing of a Ukrainian airliner over Tehran. The plane was shot down by the Revolutionary Guard earlier this month amid heightened tensions with the U.S. All 176 people aboard were killed. Iranian state television said the plane involved in Monday's incident came in harder than usual and lost its landing gear as it hit the tarmac.
Coming up, over 200 Holocaust survivors gather to remember the past. The 75th anniversary of their liberation comes amid concern about a new wave of anti-Semitism. Find out more after the break.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
More than 200 Holocaust survivors who lived through the Auschwitz concentration camp gathered today to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the camp's liberation. They are urging the world to take notice of the signs of rising anti-Semitism and hatred in the globe.
During the Holocaust, more than 1.1 million people, most of them Jews, perished in the Auschwitz camp's gas chambers or from starvation, cold, and disease. Many who made it out lost their parents and grandparents. Survivors traveled from Israel, the U.S., Australia, Peru, Russia, Slovenia, and elsewhere to attend the commemoration. Many, now elderly, were accompanied by their children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren. Polish President Andrzej Duda and the head of the World Jewish Congress, Ronald Lauder, led the ceremony. The night before the commemoration, survivors walked through the place where they had been brought in on cattle cars and suffered hunger, illness, and near death. Many leaned on their children and grandchildren for support. They said they were there to remember and share their histories with others. Gerhard Weiss, currently 91 years old, is the last surviving prosecutor from the German trial. He said, even if people don't like it, you have to keep reminding them that history must not be forgotten.
You would think that people would have learned something from it all. I can't explain what has gotten into people that they are suddenly starting to come out with things that one actually can't be allowed to say anymore.
Amid growing concerns over a global resurgence of anti-Semitism, world leaders are set to join the aging Holocaust survivors in the memorial service later on Monday.
Law enforcement across the country has access to an app that can tell people's names and possibly where they live just from a picture. The app uses social media pictures to build its database. Reporter Kevin Hogan has the details.
A facial recognition app called Clearview has been marketed to law enforcement agencies to help them quickly identify suspects. A privacy and security researcher from Columbia University explains how it works.
You take a picture, feed it into that app, and now you know their name and maybe where they live and who their friends are. It's a stalker's dream.
The app fills its database with pictures taken from the open web.
You go to a party, somebody else takes a picture and puts it up on Instagram, Facebook, what have you. They can scrape it, and there's your name.
Usually, police will compare footage from security cameras to a database of legally possessed arrest photos to identify a suspect. But Clearview goes beyond that and uses people's social media photos.
Facebook pictures, Instagram pictures are not compiled for the purpose of helping police officers or helping stalkers.
Clearview says the app can help identify child molesters, murderers, and suspected terrorists. Police have praised the technology's effectiveness. But Belevin says it is better to accept an increase in unsolved crimes so as to protect our privacy from an overbearing police force.
We are not going to let law enforcement have unbridled power. We are going to put restrictions on them. This is a conscious trade-off we are making.
Some people have expressed concerns over whether the technology should be allowed.
This isn't China. Like, they have no right to be doing that and stuff like that. Like, we have a right to privacy.
Work hard, I mind my own business. I don't like people knowing my business.
I mean, I still don't think that gives them the right to release your pictures to the police and then they can track it back to you.
The expert says the decision as to whether or not police can use this technology shouldn't be between a private company and a police commissioner. He says new laws should be passed directly addressing this issue. Reporting from New York, Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
On Friday, New Jersey's Attorney General banned the Clearview app from being used by its police department. And a diverse crowd gathered in Flushing, New York on Sunday to celebrate the Lunar New Year. Classic dragon dances, folk dance, and more delighted onlookers despite gray skies.
A rainy day didn't stop the New York City community from coming together to celebrate this year's Lunar New Year. Happy Chinese New Year! A holiday that brings festivity to people from all different ages, ethnicities, cultures, and faiths.
We're celebrating the new year. We are a vibrant Catholic school in downtown Flushing, Chinatown.
I hope that people will see the authenticity of this practice and the righteousness.
Some participate in classic dragon dances or showcase traditional Chinese drum dance. Others revive ancient culture with graceful folk dancing. Or hand out goodies and spread joy with New Year greetings.
We want to wish everyone a happy, healthy, wonderful
And what's a good parade without marching band music to fill the air?
We are trying to show the beauty of Falun Dafa through this music. So sometimes when, people get moved just listening to this music.
It's the most important holiday on the Chinese calendar, and some find importance in keeping the long-standing tradition alive.
It's the culture. That's why we have to come to the parade, let the next generation know our culture.
So we just finished the parade here in Flushing, New York, joining all the other countries in the world that are celebrating this Lunar New Year.
Up next, the 62nd Grammy Awards open in Los Angeles on a somber note. Dedicated to basketball star Kobe Bryant, and Billie Eilish made history. More on that after the break.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Are you tired of newspapers spinning the truth and pushing false narratives? And are you looking for honest coverage of Spygate, the true story of collusion? Or the truth behind the crisis at our southern border? Or how the Chinese Communist Party is working to subvert America and our way of life? Then you need to check out the Epoch Times newspaper. It's independent, nonpartisan, and it doesn't push any political agendas. Just go to readepoch.com and try it yourself for a full month for just $1. You'll absolutely love it.
And that's all for now. Thanks for tuning in. Join us again tonight. I'm Tiffany Meyer.